Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. Just wanting to have a chat on our YouTube channel. We're hoping to be able to increase the number of users on our YouTube channel. It's really important to us because there is a way by which we can optimize the channel. Monetize the channel. So we'd like you to become involved with that by joining and subscribing down here, down below, wherever it is, down there. Just subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we can have more and more hits, and also share wherever possible what happens here on YouTube. So we want you to become involved. We want you to become interactive with us. So a lot of the feeds that we do are through our Facebook page. And I did one earlier today that you all might like to have a look at, but I wish to do this one directly through YouTube because we're not using YouTube all that often, and we're planning to use it more and more so that we can be more informative about the things that are important to kids and hopefully the things that are important to you, so that we as a political party can improve the outcome in relation to children. So this is CPP TV, and we're glad that you're with us. And we hope that you become more involved with us, as every day we try and put out a new feed and have a new discussion point, and something that you can get involved in. And if you have your information and you'd like to share that with us, put it in the comments section below, and we will respond and answer any questions that you have. Or if you've got something that you need to say and that you'd like us to talk about as a topic, we'd be more than happy to do that. Now, Avery's going to get together with me on occasions, and we'll do some live feeds where Avery and I will just have a discussion about things that we think are important to us. If you wish to have a discussion with us, though, about something that you think's important and where you'd like to Skype in perhaps and have that conversation with us, we're happy to do that. Or if you'd like to meet us in the studio here, and we can talk to you about some of those things that you think are particularly important. So one of the things, so the topic is know what you are talking about. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we do know what we're talking about, even though we tend to make out that we are. One of the things I've noticed that I've got to stop doing, which I did in my other feed, is to scratch my nose, because on one of them it looked like I was picking it, and I wasn't. I just want people to know that. But it doesn't look all that pleasant when I'm all the time. So I will definitely try to avoid that. And now that I've done that, I have an itchy nose. So one of the things that occurred to me today, which I've done a podcast on, which I haven't uploaded yet, but I will later, and that is that why is it that we must insist that the knowledge that we have is so damn important that we must impart it to everybody else, even though that process in and of itself may be unhelpful. And this came about because I was working with a couple of young social workers this afternoon, and they now this is not about me being ageist, even though it may appear that it's a wee bit ageist comment to make, but they were we were talking to a client about domestic violence, or about his behaviour in the past, which they say has been unhelpful, and I guess there's no disputing that. Perhaps it was. But what interested me was that these two, well, one particular social worker decided that she wanted to talk about domestic violence and wanted to get him to accept that the way he'd behaved was unhelpful, which is appropriate. But I doubt whether sometimes these people have necessarily the skill set to be able to do that. So what I noticed is that they have, and you might notice this in some workers as well, and if you do, please let me know, that they have the textbook knowledge, which is fine. We all need that, so I get that. But they don't have the practical experience around that knowledge to determine whether or not... So one thing is having the textbook knowledge, so that's knowledge around domestic violence, how it impacts others, that sort of thing. The other thing is the other skills, which are about inquiring about what people have learned, that has helped them to develop also that knowledge based on their experience. So that's experiential knowledge. And so what I notice them do is they want to express their knowledge. So it's really important to be able to talk about what you know, because the more you talk about what you know, you're likely to convince the other person that you know more than they do. And it also says that you have far more authority than they do. And that means then that you have a position of power that they don't have. So you're more powerful than them. Now, in a therapeutic context, that's a really unhelpful environment to be, because the struggle is that when you're involved, a person's involved with a child protection system, they know that you have all the power. After all, you got their kids, so clearly you're the one with the power, and you're the one making the decisions about what will happen with those kids. So you have the power and authority. Now, power, the differentiation in power often means that one person is feeling inferior and is feeling less likely to be part of the process than the other person who has all the power. Hence the reason why it's important for people to think of themselves as having the power and authority, because then they can control the other person. Now, when you're talking about domestic violence, it brings in a really interesting dynamic for me, and that is that the person who is exerting that power is in effect systemically violent towards or abusing the other person. And sometimes I think as workers we need to understand this differentiation of power so that we can mitigate against that. Because if you're working from different perspectives, then it's not going to be helpful for the client, because they're going to feel disempowered. They're not going to feel like they need to necessarily work with you, so they might choose not to, and they choose to be resistant, and they might choose to express their feelings in a belligerent and angry manner that isn't helpful to the process. So the whole purpose of working with people is to be able to be collaborative, so that we have a sense that we're all heading in the same direction, we're all working together with the same goals, we're listening to other people, we're understanding their perspective, and we're trying to help them to understand ours as well. So, but what happens in these relationships that I see is that these social workers see themselves as those with the power. And as a result of that, we wind up with a fractured relationship. And it's really difficult to repair those relationships. So I read in the Families SA, it used to be Child Protection Manual years ago, they did raise the point that it's really difficult to be able to develop those sorts of relationships, because you've got the kids. But it is critical, though, they say, to develop a relationship that's more equal, right? And we know that the first few seconds, in fact, of meeting someone will determine often how that relationship is to be shaped for the rest of that relationship. And if you've taken their kids, it's going to be a pretty hostile relationship. So to rebuild that in a way which makes it more equal, obviously, is very difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think that what I've come to understand is that some of these social workers, particularly younger ones, are more interested in their power and authority than they are in rebuilding and building and establishing a relationship that's substantive. So as a result of all of that, often clients don't want to work with them. I had an incident. I just rubbed my nose. I had an incident a few weeks ago where the client had said to me, I find it really hard working with this particular social worker, because every time I speak to him I feel put down, I feel whatever, and I don't want to actually have any conversations with him again, so can you have the conversations with him? Anyway, I sent him an email and I explained to him what the client had said. He sent one back to me that I didn't think was all that helpful, but at the end of the day he did acknowledge that somehow he was doing something that was not helpful. So he apologised. Now, interestingly enough, the client was more than happy to accept the apology. And he said, look, I'll try and work differently on our relationship. Now, look, for that response, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, because he's actually changed his mindset around the client. And it means, though, that she has a better chance of having a more helpful relationship than the one that was there. Now, that's a credit to him. But the point is, it should never have happened in the first place. There should never have been a point whereby that relationship was fractured. He had to be reminded of that. I had to, unfortunately, and it wasn't my job You know, I don't work for the department, but it was had to be his job to rectify that, and that I found that unfortunate. Excuse me, folks. Just got to wipe my nose. It's here again. Um, see, at this time, at least acknowledging I'm wiping my nose rather than just doing it, that tends to make a difference, I think. Um, so, so I think it becomes important for us to be able to understand those differences. Now, the other thing too is that if you're going to express your textbook knowledge, at least acknowledge that you don't have experience in other areas. So this is relating to domestic violence. So she had all these wonderful things to say that I don't disagree with about how to work through DV and what the client need to be aware of. I'm aware of all of that. But at least acknowledge that you have never worked with a DV group, you never worked with a men's group, you don't know what that experience is like, but use that as an opportunity to be able to find out what that experience actually is like. So you could have conversations with the client about, you know, what did you experience, not only what did you learn, what were other people talking about that was really helpful to you. He mentioned that he had learned from the group, from others. There was an opportunity there, therefore, to talk to him about what that was. But the inexperience meant, and that sense of power and authority meant, that he wasn't able to talk about that because he wasn't asked. And, you know, some weeks before we had a similar meeting, and I asked him about what happened in the group, and he was able to articulate that because we were able to ask him questions that were relevant to him. And it's not about, and what really frustrates me is sometimes it's just about, I think it's about showing off. You know, I've just come out of university, I have all this knowledge, I've done these other additional courses, I now know about child protection, so somehow I'm a child protection expert. Well, you're not. You know, the reality is that we're not an expert in anything. We might have information that might be helpful around certain things. I'm not an expert in anything. The important thing to remember is that the client is always the expert in their lives. And we're trying, in a way, sometimes to reshape their lives that are more helpful to them. But how they go about reshaping their lives depends very much on the experiences that they've had. So we need to explore those experiences so that they can work out new ways to experience their future life, if you like, or their life as it is right now. So we need to work with them around some of those issues so that the changes can take place. Now, I get very, very frustrated when people attempt to subjugate the information that is being offered to them by the client, and they mitigate that circumstance. There's always an opportunity, I think, to be able to talk to people in a way which helps you to understand them and for them to believe that they're heard, you know? And often that's done from a position of genuineness, of empathy, of caring for them, of really wanting to have things improve for them, and particularly in these cases, their kids. So there's lots of opportunities here, and we miss those opportunities. And I just want to say, from the Child Protection Party's perspective, these are the things that need to change. If we had social workers who worked more effectively and constructively with clients in ways which brought about change for the client rather than this power stuff and pushing against them, then we'd have far better outcomes. We'd have children that would be removed, that would be returned earlier. We would have children that would find, if they have to be removed from their parents, would find substantial placements and not be separated from their siblings. I just noticed the video might be a bit hesitant at the moment because there is an error, but we'll just see how that works, and we'll see whether we can fix that. So I'll just keep going until such time as we just fade out and there's nothing. I guess what I need you to do is to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can have these types of conversations, and that we can have enough people watching us so that we can generate enough hits, enough views over a certain period of time, which are the requirements from YouTube, so that we can get appropriate funding. So help us by watching us so that we can continue to do what we're doing and continue to look at our YouTube, ring the bell down the bottom here, and do all the other stuff that you need to do so that we can have these conversations in the future, and so that you can become a part of what the Child Protection Party is, and you can become a part of something that is really sensational. Thanks very much for watching us, and we hope very much that you will continue to do so. Thanks.